From steam wagons built in Shrewsbury to the last true British-built flagship out of Sandbach, these are the lorries that shaped the nation's roads. Some hauled army tanks, others hauled nothing more exciting than fish and chips, but everyone earned its place in British trucking folklore. These are 20 British lorries we'll never forget. Number 20. Before AEC became famous for eight-wheelers, it built one of the toughest military lorries Britain ever fielded, the Matador. Introduced in 1932 as a civilian 5-ton, 4x2 lorry, the design was adapted into the legendary 4x4 artillery tractor that towed guns like the 5.5-inch medium gun and the 3.7-inch anti-aircraft gun across the deserts of North Africa. Soldiers nicknamed it simply the Mat, and its low gearing, built-in winch, and genuine off-road ability made it one of the most trusted vehicles in the British Army's fleet. A 6x6 version, essentially a Marshall fitted with Matador axles, saw service as an RAF fuel Bowser. Long after the war ended, surplus Matadors found second careers on farms and construction sites across Britain, still hauling, just without the guns behind them. Number 19. Long before diesel ever growled its way onto British roads, the Sentinel steam wagon was doing the heavy lifting. Built at the Sentinel Wagon Works in Shrewsbury from 1915 onward, these coal and water-powered giants hauled coal, timber, and general goods with a vertical boiler and a distinctive undertype engine. Drivers needed a mate just to keep the fire going and the water topped up, and a good crew could get remarkable mileage out of a ton of coal. Sentinel kept building steam wagons right through to the early 1950s, decades after most of the industry had switched to oil engines, because operators trusted them, and Shrewsbury refused to let go of what it did best. Number 18. Not every British lorry was built with the M1 in mind. The Leyland Roadtrain arrived in 1980 as a bonneted, go-anywhere truck designed for Africa, Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America, built at Leyland's own factories and shipped out in kit form to be assembled locally in Kenya and Nigeria. Under the bonnet sat a Cummins or Leyland Straight 6, producing up to 290 horsepower, married to a chassis tough enough for roads that barely deserved the name. Production ran until 1987, right up until Leyland merged with the Dutch firm DAF. And for a company built on Lancashire engineering, it's a reminder that some of Britain's toughest lorries never worked a single day on British soil. Number 17. If you ever heard a commer coming before you saw it, you'll never forget the sound. The TS3 engine, developed by the Roots Group at Stoke-Aldermore and built at the old Tilling-Stevens plant in Maidstone from 1954, was a two-stroke, three-cylinder diesel with 6 pistons arranged in pairs facing each other inside horizontal cylinders. Mounting the engine flat under the cab let Commer drop the bonnet entirely, giving Britain one of its first proper cab-over lorries. Export versions fitted with an undamped compressor developed a distinctive knock rattle as the timing gears wore in, and that's exactly where the nickname Commer Knocker came from, mostly among drivers in Australia and New Zealand rather than back home. Odd-looking, oddly economical, and unlike anything else on British roads, the TS3 proved British engineering was never afraid of doing things differently. Number 16. Before the TK became a household name, there was the Bedford S, launched at the Commercial Vehicle Show in 1950 and known to everyone on the road simply as the Big Bedford. It was the largest lorry Bedford had ever built, running first with a petrol engine before a Perkins diesel arrived in 1953, and it quickly became the truck of choice for hauliers, fire brigades, and general traders right through the 1950s and 1960s. One even hauled Britain's first liquid egg tanker. Available in 3 wheelbases and built with a straightforward, no-nonsense cab, the Big Bedford earned a reputation for dependability in a decade when dependable wasn't something you could take for granted. It set the template that Bedford would perfect a decade later, and for a generation of drivers, It was simply what a proper lorry was supposed to look like. Number 15. Ford wanted to build the ultimate European flagship, and in 1975, it very nearly did. The Transcontinental, officially the H Series, paired a towering cab built by French manufacturer Berliet with a 14-liter Cummins engine, a Fuller gearbox, and Rockwell axles, all bolted onto a chassis based loosely on the American Louisville. One Ford salesman was famously asked what exactly Ford actually built on the truck, given everything came from somewhere else, and he answered, the profit, of course. Assembled mostly in Amsterdam, with a run of 504 built at the old Foden plant in Sandbach, the Transcontinental offered comfort and power that outclassed most British rivals of the era. Number 14. By the late 1990s, Foden was fighting for survival, and the Alpha was its last real roll of the dice. Launched in 1998, after Packard shifted production from Sandbach to the Leyland factory, the Alpha borrowed its cab, cosmetically reworked, from sister company DAF's 75 and 85 series, finally giving Foden drivers a comfortable cab after years of complaints about the old 3000 and 4000 series. It replaced both those ranges in one go and was usually specified with Cummins power. Fleet drivers who switched from the old plastic-cabbed Fodens to the Alpha noticed the difference immediately, with better fuel economy, better comfort, and a genuinely modern feel. It wasn't enough to save the mark. Number 13. Glasgow doesn't get nearly enough credit in the story of British trucking, and Albion Motors is exactly why it should. Built at the Scotsdown, works from 1899 onward, Albion named its lorries after Scottish history and legend, the Chieftain, the Clydesdale, and the six-wheeled Reaver among them, each one wearing the company's distinctive sunrise badge on the grille. Albion vehicles were shipped out to South Africa, East Africa, India, and Australia, carrying Scottish engineering to every corner of the old empire. For drivers north of the border, an Albion Reaver wasn't just a lorry. It was a piece of Glasgow's industrial pride, built a few miles from the shipyards that made the city famous. Number 12. No British lorry did more hauling for more people than the Bedford TK. Launched in September 1960 to replace the Big Bedford, it went on to sell more than 620,000 units before production finally ended in 1992, making it one of the best-selling trucks Britain ever produced. Offered with 4 6-cylinder petrol and diesel engines and a choice of 4 or 5-speed gearboxes, the TK became the default lorry for removal firms, coal merchants, and the British Army alike. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't fast, but it was simple enough to fix at the roadside and reliable enough that some are still hauling loads in places like Bangladesh today, decades after Luton stopped building them. Ask any driver who cut their teeth in the 1960s or 70s what their first lorry was, and there's a good chance the answer starts with the letters T and K, number 11. When Jaguar bought Guy Motors out of receivership in 1961, nobody expected a sports car maker to build one of the decade's best-selling trucks. But that's exactly what happened when the Big J arrived in 1964. High-revving Cummins V6 engine paired with a 12-speed splitter gearbox. The V6 layout left enough room for a genuine walk-through cab. And by the 1970s, the Big J4T had become, by some counts, the biggest-selling top-weight tractor unit in Britain. It carried the Guy name proudly through the chaos of British Leyland's early years. Number 10. By 1980, Leyland needed something to fight back against the Scandinavian invasion, and the Roadtrain, built under the T45 project, was its answer. Designed jointly by Leyland, BRS, and Ogle Design, the new C40 cab was meant to replace half a dozen aging models with one modern, aerodynamic shape, and it won industry awards for the effort. Engine choices ranged from the AEC-derived TL12 to the Rolls-Royce Eagle and the Cummins L10, and operators like Tesco and Blue Circle Industries ran them by the thousand. The high-datum interstate sleeper cab later gave drivers proper standing room for the first time. a genuine luxury on long European runs. The British Army even bought over 1,400 road trains for its drops logistics system, some of which saw service in Iraq and Afghanistan decades after the civilian version left the showroom. Number 9. Two proud Lancashire names became one in 1970, with a steel tilt cab styled by Ogle and motor panels replacing the bonneted look Atkinson drivers had known for decades. Power came from Cummins, Gardner, or Rolls-Royce diesels producing up to 320 horsepower. It wasn't a perfect truck. Cab corrosion became a well-known complaint, but for a decade, the Seddon Atkinson 400 proved that two smaller British firms could combine into something genuinely competitive against the continent. Number 8. The eight-wheeler wars of the 1930s produced some genuine giants, and the Leyland Octopus was one of the finest. The post-war Octopus carried a 9.8-liter Leyland engine and a completely modernized cab, and octopuses became a common sight, hauling everything from coal to construction materials across Britain's growing road network. Where the AEC Mammoth Major had rivals chasing its lead in payload, the Octopus answered with Leyland reliability and a badge that operators trusted implicitly. For haulage firms across the Northwest, where Leyland's own factories sat, running an Octopus wasn't really a choice. It was practically a point of local pride. Number 7. Ask any driver from the 1980s what a gaffer's motor looked like, and there's a fair chance they'll describe an ERF E Series. The E Series carried Cummins and Rolls-Royce engines, the latter later built by Perkins, paired with Eaton Fuller gearboxes and Rockwell axles. It never quite matched the driver appeal of Volvo or Scania, and it earned a reputation as cheap to run but light on frills. Yet by 1988, ERF was registering nearly 4,000 trucks a year in Britain, proof that plenty of operators valued value over vanity. The E-Series carried ERF's independent, family-owned spirit right through the 1980s, keeping the Sandbach name alive until something even better came along. Number 6. Before Foden chased American-style comfort, it built lorries that looked like nothing else on the road. The 1954 KV Range, with its oval grille and wraparound windscreen, became an instant 50s classic. And in 1962, Foden went a step further, launching the S24, Britain's first tilt cab on a heavy lorry, identifiable by its oblong headlamps and single-piece windscreen. Built at the Ellsworth Works in Sandbach and usually running Gardner engines, these S-Series Fodens became fixtures for firms hauling everything from sugar to steel across the country. For drivers who worked through the 1960s, the sight of a Foden's rounded, businesslike cab rumbling down the A roads was as familiar as the weather, and just as reliably British. Number 5. When ERF celebrated its Diamond Jubilee in 1993, it marked the occasion by launching the EC Series, the last completely new product the company would ever design as an independent, family-owned firm. The flagship Olympic model offered over 6 feet of interior headroom, a genuine home away from home for drivers spending nights on the road. The most popular variant, the EC10 325, ran a 24-valve Cummins L10 engine paired with Eaton's twin-split transmission, a combination drivers swore by for economy and reliability. Within a few years, ERF was swallowed first by Western Star. Number 4. In 1929, Scammell decided to build the biggest lorry the world had ever seen, and the result, quite literally, was called the 100-tonner, and originally fitted with a thirsty 7-liter petrol engine that burned a gallon of fuel every 3/4 of a mile, before later being rebuilt with Gardner diesel power to bring consumption down to a far more sensible 4.2 miles per gallon. It grew out of Scammell's earlier Pioneer, a 6-wheeled cross-country tractor from 1927 with a walking beam bogie that let any wheel lift 2 feet without losing traction. A design so effective, it later formed the basis of Britain's 30-ton tank transporter during the Second World War. Watford's Scammell Works had a habit of building lorries nobody else would even attempt. And the 100-tonner remains the boldest example of that stubborn British ambition. Number 3. Some lorries haul goods. The Scammell Contractor hauled entire oil rigs. Introduced in 1964 with a Cummins 335 engine, a Leip clutch, and a Fuller gearbox, the Contractor became the tractor of choice for Britain's heaviest of heavy haulage firms. Arriving in the late 1970s, packed an 18-liter, 425 horsepower Cummins engine. And by 1983, Scammell had built a version fitted with a Rolls-Royce engine. Pickfords ran Contractors in their famous heavy haulage livery for years, hauling loads no ordinary tractor unit could touch. Number 2. Every haulage firm needs a workhorse, and for decades that workhorse was the AEC Mandator. Built at the Southall Works from the 1930s onward, the Mandator became AEC's standard tractor unit, the truck that quietly did the unglamorous business of pulling trailers up and down Britain's trunk roads while flashier eight-wheelers got the attention. Engines built with the kind of over-engineering that came straight out of the company's wartime experience, building the Matador gun tractor. It was never the most exciting name on the road, but ask any old AEC driver, and the Mandator is usually the one they remember most fondly. Number 1. Britain's love affair with the eight-wheeler starts here. In 1934, AEC became the first manufacturer in the world to launch a rigid eight-wheeler powered by an internal combustion engine, giving it a gross weight allowance of 22 tons and a payload nearly 2.5 tons higher than any six-wheeler could manage. Firms like Whitbread ran fleets of them for decades, and the name became shorthand across the industry for serious hauling power. For an entire generation of British drivers and spotters alike, an eight-wheeler simply was a mammoth major, whatever badge some other manufacturer happened to be selling. 20 lorries, and that barely scratches the surface of what Britain built during a century of engineering that answered to nobody but itself. Nearly every one of these badges is gone now, swallowed by mergers, receiverships, and takeovers that nobody in the industry particularly wanted. But drive past any transport rally, any vintage vehicle show, or any quiet corner of a working farm, and you'll still find a Mammoth Major, a Roadtrain, or a battered old TK doing exactly what it was built to do decades ago. Which one takes you back the furthest? Drop it in the comments and let us know which lorry we missed.